11 p.m. December 31st, 2025. 50 feet beneath the frozen ground of occupied Donetsk, a party is raging inside a reinforced concrete bunker. Elite Russian brigade commanders are clinking glasses and wishing each other an early Happy New Year. But in exactly 62 minutes, a beat-up civilian truck is going to turn their VIP lounge into a literal hell on earth. 2 days ago, a rusty Ukrainian Kamaz truck loaded with timber and wearing fake civilian license plates quietly parked in a forest strip just 10 miles from this bunker. A small technical team planted laser beacons high in the trees and scattered remote-controlled flare decoys around the perimeter before vanishing. They left the truck there silent and dormant. 70 miles away in a warm base, a Ukrainian operator sits in front of a 4K monitor with a cup of hot coffee. On his command, the cargo bed of the timber truck slides open automatically. 22 FPV drones weighing just 5 pounds each buzz out of the hidden launch rails like a swarm of angry hornets. While the Russian pantsir operator lazily scans his radar, probably sipping vodka instead of watching the scope. The death swarm begins its silent flight. These aren't your standard hobby drones. They immediately drop to the deck, leveling out at just 30 feet above the frozen mud. At this altitude, they are flying below the tree line, invisible to long-range radar. The onboard AI takes over the heavy lifting, making thousands of micro-adjustments per second to dodge frozen tree branches, navigate the rolling hills of Donetsk, and fight the biting 5-degree Fahrenheit crosswinds. Suddenly, the lead drone sensors flag an obstacle. A Russian patrol consisting of 2 Ural trucks is rumbling down a dirt road directly in the flight path. This could be a mission kill. But as the swarm approaches, the operator notices something hilarious. The Russian drivers aren't scanning the sky. They have their windows rolled up and are blasting music so loud the bass is vibrating their side mirrors. The swarm simply banks left. The AI guides 22 flying bombs in a wide, silent arc around the patrol. The Russians drive right past their own executioners, bobbing their heads to the beat, completely oblivious. The gap closes. 8 miles, 6 miles, 4 miles. The party crashers are almost at the door. 11:10 p.m. The lethargy inside the Pantsir S1 control vehicle evaporates instantly as the acquisition radar screams a proximity warning. Down in the bunker, the commander initially waves off the alert as a flock of migratory birds, but his dismissal turns into frozen horror as the repeater screen resolves 22 distinct attack vectors closing in at attack speed. The air defense system engages automatically. A volley of 57 E-6 missiles accelerates to Mach 4, tearing into the darkness. The intercept is violent and precise. 8 of the lead Ukrainian drones disintegrate in blinding flashes of expanding lithium and plastic, momentarily turning the night sky over Donetsk into a sheet of daylight. The radar operator celebrates the hits, but the scope immediately updates to reveal a nightmare scenario. 14 targets are still airborne, and they haven't deviated a single degree. Inside the command post, the celebration collapses into chaos. The music cuts out, replaced by the clatter of overturned tables and shattering Stolichnaya bottles. Infantrymen scramble to pull tactical gear over their dress uniforms in a panicked frenzy. In the confusion, a young lieutenant loses his footing on a puddle of spilled liquor, crashing hard onto the tiled floor. The electronic warfare officer hammers the emergency activation switch, flooding the local spectrum with high-intensity jamming noise. For a split second, the Ukrainian feed 70 miles away washes out in static, but the swarm is already executing its next move. 11:12 p.m. The Russian electronic warfare system surges to maximum output, flooding the zone with enough electromagnetic noise to fry consumer electronics. This digital whiteout is designed to sever the link between the drones and their operator, effectively blinding the swarm. However, the Ukrainian software anticipates the interference. The onboard processors instantly cut the manual control feed and engage fully autonomous AI mode. Ignoring the radio static, the drones lock onto the invisible infrared pulses emitting from the laser beacons planted high in the canopy 48 hours prior. They stop flying like remotely controlled toys and start flying like guided missiles, weaving through the jamming field with mathematical precision. Desperate to regain control of the airspace, the Pantsir crew manages a rapid reload and unleashes a second volley of interceptors. The night sky lights up again, but as the missiles arc downward, the hidden Kamaz truck activates its secondary payload. 6 remote-controlled magnesium flares erupt from the surrounding forest floor, burning hotter than the sun. The heat-seeking sensors on the Russian 57 E-6 missiles take the bait instantly. Instead of hitting the drones, $4 million worth of advanced weaponry slams harmlessly into empty snow, chasing thermal phantoms. The Russian operator slams his hands onto the console in futile rage as his screen shows the warheads detonating against nothing but cold air. The escalation peaks as the heavy thrum of rotor blades shakes the tree line. Two K-52 Alligator attack helicopters scrambled from a nearby airfield roar into the kill box just 4 minutes after the initial alert. The pilots unleash a barrage of S-8 unguided rockets, turning the forest floor into a churning sea of fire and shrapnel. It is a visual spectacle, but tactically it is a failure. The FPV drones are too small, too cold, and flying too low for the heavy rockets to find a purchase. The helicopters are effectively trying to kill mosquitoes with a sledgehammer. Despite the overwhelming firepower turning the landscape into a cratered hellscape, the swarm weaves through the explosions, dropping altitude to skid just inches above the burnt earth, closing the distance to the bunker vents with terrifying persistence. 11:15 p.m. The aerial engagement over the Donetsk forest collapses into a humiliating tactical retreat for the Russian aerospace forces. The pilots of the two Ka-52 Alligators sitting in cockpits worth $20 million stare at their sensors and realize the terrifying math of asymmetric warfare. They have expended their entire payload of S-8 rockets and 30mm cannon shells churning up dirt. Yet the swarm persists. The flight computer screams proximity warnings as the 5-pound drones buzz dangerously close to the delicate turbine intakes. A single plastic drone sucked into an engine would result in a catastrophic compressor stall, turning a state-of-the-art gunship into a burning lawn dart. Risking a premier attack helicopter to kill a flying toy is a bad trade. The lead pilot yanks his collective banking, the heavy machine, hard to the west, abandoning the airspace to the tiny, cheap executioners. With the heavy metal gone, the 5 surviving FPV drones enter their terminal attack profile. They drop to an altitude of 3 feet, literally skimming the snow, their cameras fixated on the bunker's fatal architectural flaw. Soviet doctrine dictated that underground command posts needed massive air filtration systems to survive nuclear fallout, but the engineers of the 1970s never anticipated a threat small enough to fly down the chimney. The external intake vents, 2-foot-wide steel throats protruding from the concrete cap, are wide open. Inside the command center, the atmosphere shifts from drunken confusion to absolute primal clarity. The high-definition surveillance feed from the perimeter cameras shows the drones lining up like planes on a runway. The brigade commander, realizing the threat isn't the explosions outside but the pipes above his head, screams for the blast dampers to be sealed. A junior officer scrambles up a ladder to the manual override wheel, adrenaline making his hands shake violently. He hauls on the rusted iron crank, desperate to close the steel iris. But years of neglect and moisture have seized the mechanism. The wheel groans and barely moves. The buzzing sound of the high RPM electric motors begins to echo down the ventilation shafts, growing louder with every heartbeat, sounding like a dentist's drill amplified 1,000 times. Simultaneously, 10 miles to the north, the ground hunt reaches its violent crescendo. A Russian quick reaction force comprised of 3 BTR-80 armored personnel carriers and a squad of Spetsnaz infantry finally triangulates the launch signature. They roar into the forest, clearing their BTR searchlights, cutting through the darkness, illuminating the Kamaz logging truck. The heavy 14.5mm KPVT machine guns on the BTR turrets open fire, instantly shredding the truck's cab and cargo bed. Wood splinters and metal tears as the heavy caliber rounds punch through the vehicle. But they are murdering a corpse. As the first rounds impact the truck's internal self-destruct fail-safe triggers, thermite grenades rigged to the control console ignite, burning at 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The intense heat melts the flight logs, the laptop hard drives, and the launcher mechanisms into a glowing puddle of unrecognizable slag within seconds. The Russians storm the burning vehicle, weapons raised, expecting to find a special forces team. Instead, they find an empty cab and a dashboard that is actively melting through the chassis. They have captured a pile of burning scrap metal. A mile away, the real targets are running for their lives. The 3-man Ukrainian technical team is tearing down a frozen, rutted logging road in a beat-up civilian pickup truck. They are driving in blackout mode, headlights, killed brake lights taped over, navigating solely by the green phosphor glow of their night vision goggles. The driver wrestles the wheel as the suspension slams against the frozen ruts, fighting to keep the vehicle on the road at 60 miles per hour. Behind them, the forest erupts. The Russian BTR gunners, realizing they missed the operators, begin spray firing into the surrounding woods. Tracers streak through the trees like angry red meteors. A heavy 14.5mm round shears through a pine tree just feet from the pickup's tailgate, exploding the trunk into a shower of wood chips. Another round strikes the truck's rear fender, tearing off the metal with the sound of a banshee, but the fuel tank holds. The driver downshifts, drifts around a sharp, icy bend, and punches the accelerator, disappearing into the deep sanctuary of the Ukrainian night. Back at the bunker, the race against physics ends. The manual damper wheel is stuck halfway open. The lead drone, carrying a 2-pound shaped charge, tilts its nose up and dives smoothly into the dark throat of the ventilation shaft. At 11:16 p.m., the physics of confined space explosions takes over, and the result is absolute structural violence. The first drone reaches the bottom of the ventilation shaft and detonates its 2-pound tandem-shaped charge. In an open field, this would be a small crater, but inside a sealed concrete box 50 feet underground, it is a physics experiment gone wrong. The initial blast wave, moving at 26,000 feet per second, has nowhere to expand. It rebounds off the reinforced walls, amplifying the overpressure to a skull-crushing 5,000 psi. But the real devastation comes from the remaining 4 drones following the leader down the pipe. They arrive in split-second intervals, acting like a daisy-chained pile driver. The cumulative detonation of 10 pounds of high explosives ignites the bunker's internal atmosphere, which is already rich with spilled high-proof alcohol and ruptured gas lines from the kitchen. The result is a thermobaric event. The blast doors, designed to withstand a nuclear shockwave from the outside, are useless against a pressure spike from the inside. They buckle and blow outward off their hinges. Above ground, the scene is apocalyptic. The ventilation shafts, which seconds ago were sucking in air, suddenly reverse flow. Massive geysers of orange fire and black smoke erupt from the ground like a dormant volcano waking up, shooting 100 feet into the night sky. The overpressure is so violent it cracks the frozen soil around the bunker's perimeter, creating a spiderweb of fissures that glow with the hellfire raging below. By morning, the strategic impact is undeniable. The Russian offensive in the Donetsk sector grinds to a chaotic halt. Units on the front line stop receiving orders. Artillery batteries sit silent, waiting for firing coordinates that will never come because the men who issue them are currently being excavated from a collapsed concrete tomb. Russian command and control in the sector has effectively been lobotomized for at least a week. Meanwhile, 10 miles away, the Russian quick reaction force is left kicking ash. They stare at the twisted, burning remains of the decoy truck, realizing they just expended thousands of rounds of ammunition to kill a pile of burning wood and a melted remote control. Let's look at the ROI on this hangover. Ukraine spent maybe $100,000 on a used truck and 22 hobby drones. In exchange, they wiped out a command node worth millions and erased decades of accumulated military experience in a single flash. It is the ultimate asymmetric trade. This operation wasn't a fluke. It echoes the sinking of the Moskva flagship, where Ukrainian operators used a cheap Bayraktar drone to distract the ship's radar defense, allowing Neptune missiles to slip in unnoticed. Tonight we saw the exact same tactical brilliance decoy flares mesmerizing the pantsir crews, while the real killers flew in under the radar. It is the same playbook, just refined for the holiday season. It connects directly to the Sea Baby revolution in the Black Sea. When Russia blockaded the ocean with billion-dollar frigates, Ukraine didn't build a navy. They built remote-controlled jet skis packed with TNT and chased the entire Russian fleet out of Sevastopol. They traded plastic hulls for steel warships. And let's not forget the Crimean bridge attack, where they weaponized the very concept of civilian logistics. Whether it is turning a kayak into a battleship killer or a rusted logging truck into a mobile airstrike, the philosophy remains ruthless and consistent. Find the blind spot, exploit the arrogance, and deliver maximum return on investment. Russia keeps building bigger, more expensive locks, and Ukraine keeps inventing cheaper, smarter lockpicks. The smoking crater in Donetsk is just the latest reminder that in this war, creativity is the only superweapon that actually matters. The lesson here is simple. In modern warfare, there is no such thing as a safe rear area. You can bury yourself in concrete, you can surround yourself with pantsirs, and you can jam the radio waves. But if you decide to throw a party with a civilian truck parked down the road, you are inviting the wrong guests. Ukraine just proved that ingenuity beats brute force every time. Glory to Ukraine and to the Russians. Have a very explosive new year. If you were the operator, what time would you have launched the swarm to catch them at their drunkest? Let me know in the comments below. Bye for now.